Cheese. All right, and welcome back to That's Some Cheese, part of the Vendetta Sports Podcast Network. Today is Wednesday, December 4th. Right now, I have a special guest on the line, Adam Ramirez. He is new to the site, so this is the best way for you guys to get to know him. Adam, what's going on? How you doing today?
How's it going, Trey? Happy to be on here. Happy to be working for the site. And excited, man. Excited to talk sports and continue writing about football, basketball, baseball.
I've been impressed with a couple of your articles. I liked some of the work that you did. So basically my idea was to talk about some of the posts that you did in length, get the people to know you. So topic number one, you wrote a bit about the Nets, the Celtics. This is an interesting dynamic because I think a lot of pressure here. I think Kyrie Irving's the swing guy here. He couldn't get it done in Boston. They didn't really achieve anything. Some people made the argument the Celtics were better without him. Now he goes to Brooklyn. I feel like there's real pressure on him to win titles with Durant because now he's a guy that left LeBron. He's a guy that left Brad Stevens in the Celtics. This is what he wanted. So if he's not winning titles with the Nets, I feel like people are going to really crush him. And maybe it's a Nets-Celtics rivalry thing, but I think this went to a whole nother level with the Kyrie stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an issue of timing. You know, you wanted out of Cleveland because you wanted to be the guy, and he finally got that opportunity in Boston, and right when they're contending in his first year there, he goes down. He's not really able to contribute as they're heading into the playoffs. And then during the playoffs, all of a sudden, I think even Boston fans were surprised to see all the youth kind of come together. They were led by Al Horford, guys like Marcus Smart, who were leading not necessarily through being vocal with the media, but just through their example. So this team kind of came together without Kyrie, and by the time he comes back last season, it's just an awkward mix. And not just him. I mean, Gordon Hayward came back from his injury, and it was hard for him to gel with the offense too. So I think the timing just wasn't there for him in Boston. And what's funny is that he ended up falling into a situation similar to what he had in Cleveland. Now he's back in the situation where he's not necessarily going to be the leader of the Nets, especially when Durant comes back. At best, he'll be a co-leader and with Durant. So in terms of whether he needs to win championships or not, I think you're right. I think Brooklyn is counting on him. I think he himself needs to recognize that parting ways with LeBron when he did, the whole purpose was to prove that he can be the man, and he's clearly not going to do it this year on his own. And when he comes back with Durant, I think it'll be interesting to see if he can pull that off, something he couldn't do in Boston.
Yeah, I think another interesting point here is the Celtics look a lot better than I thought they would. Now, I'm a Celtics fan. I didn't really know what to make of them coming into the year. I thought maybe the young guys could get better, but I wasn't convinced they would ever take a leap. And Kemba Walker isn't as good as Kyrie, so they'd probably get worse. And who knows if they'd miss Al Horford. But they honestly look better than they did a year ago. And they lost Kyrie and they lost Horford. And this team just kind of meshes. Is it possible that this Celtics team, maybe they get the upper hand over the Nets, even with Durant and with Kyrie on the other side? Because right now, the way the Celtics are playing, I'm really encouraged.
Yeah, and I think they definitely can as well. I think they need to figure out what they're going to do at the 5, because right now they're definitely a team that's going to have to rely heavily on small ball, especially when they get into the playoffs. But their wings are incredible. The development of Tatum and Brown, for guys that are in their super early 20s to be able to start becoming leaders so quickly, I think that's what's key here to why they're able to gel so well, because the egos aren't there just yet. I think Kemba Walker, like you said, he's not as skilled as Kyrie, but he also doesn't come in with a lot of the drama that Kyrie necessarily demanded, right? So he comes in kind of understanding that the team is already there. He wants to come in and obviously use his skill to benefit the team, but he's doing it more in a quiet fashion. And, the other day, they played against the Nets, first time that the Nets went to Boston after acquiring Kyrie. Kyrie wasn't there, but Kemba put up a quiet 30 points. I mean, stuff like that, I think, is what makes this Boston team strong. if they can shore up that 5 position, I think that they could easily get the upper hand over the Nets in a 7-game series in the playoffs.
You brought up 2 good points I want to hit on. Isn't it funny how, like, Kemba Walker was with the Hornets forever, and he just never won and never won and never won? I think part of this is Kemba Walker is like, holy crow, I have Tatum and Brown, and when Gordo gets back, I have a lot of dudes here. I can share the ball, and the ball's really flying all over the place. Is it something to where Kemba Walker's so appreciative of what he has around him that, of course, the chemistry is going to be better because he was dealing with crap in Charlotte? Anything's an upgrade over that. So, yeah, they're going to be a lot happier.
Yeah, I mean, what they did to him in Charlotte was just tragic. To have Batum be the highest price free agent that team ever acquired was horrible. And you're right. I think knowing that you spent your entire career like that, it kind of changes your perspective, and it makes you understand that if you're in a situation where there's chemistry, where the team is gelling, where you have a good head coach, it's better to just put your head down, go to work, and get the job done. And I think Kyrie had that too before LeBron came back, right? But I didn't think he didn't have it for as long as Kemba did, to have to go through those agonizing seasons where you know you're the best player on the floor, but your team's ceiling is capped because of your surrounding talent. So I think he quickly forgot that when LeBron came back in 2014, and it was easier for him to say, I can do this on my own. So you're right. I think Kemba's appreciativeness is going to be huge for the Celtics moving forward.
The other thing you mentioned I want to hit on real quick, and then we can move on to the next thing. I don't necessarily think the Celtics do need another 5, because maybe it's not sustainable, but the way Marcus Smart is defending, he's defending dudes 6 inches taller than him, and he's really doing a great job. And if they can continue to roll out these small ball lineups, we saw for years the Warriors were able to win like this with Draymond Green kind of being the 5 or whatever. The way Marcus Smart's defending, I think it kind of works. And why can't Enes Kanter play 20 minutes and Daniel Tice does his thing and they rock with the small ball lineup and Marcus Smart? And I don't know, I think it works.
I think you're right. I think it could work. I think one of the things that the Warriors had that allowed them to succeed that Boston doesn't necessarily have at that level yet was the shooting. The shooting was automatic for Golden State, for the teams that won that championship. I think that shooting could be there for Boston. They've certainly had performances where their wings are able to knock down shots all game. Tatum is getting much better from all over the court, not just the mid-range. And so is Brown. So I think it's possible. I think without addressing the 5, they could definitely get out of the Eastern Conference. But you put them in a situation where you want to see if they can win the finals, and you put that team against some of the big guys that can play in the Western Conference in the NBA Finals, and I think they might run into a little bit of a wall there. But you're right. I don't see why with a small ball lineup they can't make a ton of noise for a very, very young team.
Yeah, I think we're also forgetting too that Gordon Hayward really, when he played, this team looked unbeatable. And they kind of take a step back when he's gotten hurt with the broken hand. But I think the shooting's going to be there when he's there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely a possibility, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see that kind of lineup. I love that kind of basketball, and it'll be interesting to see how teams like the Nets, who have so much history with the Celtics, are able to contend with them once both teams are at full power.
So you also wrote another post about Anthony Davis, and we can move on to this. The Lakers, the Pelicans, and Anthony Davis all win last summer's trade. That's what you wrote. Now, I agree kind of on the surface, but I don't necessarily know if New Orleans really, really won. Now, Ingram looks great. Ingram looks like a superstar, but I don't necessarily think they came away to where they're going to get another Anthony Davis. And I guess it's always you're never going to win when the star player leaves. But if it's just Ingram, because Lonzo Ball doesn't look great. If it's just Ingram, did they really win the trade? That's kind of hard for me to think that.
Yeah, so I think the point that I was trying to make in that article is that there's a pathway for all three factors in the trade to win, for the Lakers, for the Pelicans, and for Anthony Davis. And I don't think we're really going to see that until 5-6 years down the line, because obviously anytime you have a trade, both teams are giving something up, and both teams are hoping for something. In the Lakers' case, they're hoping for a few championships within the next couple of years, because that's all you have left under LeBron's contract, and because you really mortgage your future, so you don't have a lot of draft potential that's going to be coming in the future years. And for the Pelicans, you have time. Time is, I think, their biggest asset right now. They don't have to have a determination of whether or not they won this trade until we see what those draft picks that they took from the Lakers develop into over the next few years, on top of seeing how Lonzo and Ingram and Josh Hart develop, and then on top of seeing Zion. Remember, we haven't seen Zion this whole season, right? So we're 2 months, almost 3 months into the season, and we haven't seen the guy play. So we don't know how he's going to be able to fill Anthony Davis' shoes at the 4. We also don't know what's going to happen down the line in terms of future free agency. One of the last points that I made in the articles was, wouldn't it be interesting if a true spirit of everybody winning would be Davis winning his championships in LA, and then by the time his new contract comes up, however long that is, he comes back to New Orleans after all these young guys develop into veteran players and plays with Zion to win a few more. That'd be something to see, and there'd be definitely no losers in that trade if that was the case.
Now, I kind of whiffed on this part. I was critical of the Pelicans for not getting back Kuzma. I thought if you were going to make a trade with the Lakers, Kuzma had to be in the deal. But honestly, yeah, Ingram's the best player, or at least now maybe Kuzma would be doing this in New Orleans, but Ingram looks unbelievable. He's starting to finally live up to that Kevin Durant, baby Durant kind of potential. Maybe he'll never be as good as Durant, but God, does he look great. So I think that's good for New Orleans. However, I don't know, we could swing this. Did the Lakers make a mistake giving up Ingram? Should the Pelicans have gotten Kuzma? Maybe it was fair. How do you wrap your head around it? Because it's definitely win now mode for the Lakers.
Yeah, I think had the Lakers been the Pelicans been a bit more patient, they could have gotten the Lakers to add Kuzma to the deal. I don't think there was any way that LeBron James was going to let the Lakers head into this season without Anthony Davis. So I'm sure that they would have been willing to sell everything. Now, they were able to keep Kuzma, which I think is fine. I think he would be playing well in New Orleans, and I'm sure he'd be a fine asset. But like you said, Brandon Ingram, New Orleans hit the lottery if this guy develops into what his potential could be. I think it might sound controversial, but I still think Brandon Ingram has the potential to be the best player from this draft, especially when you compare him to the struggles that we've seen with Ben Simmons, still developing a shot, other aspects of his game. So I think that, yeah, it would have been great to have Kuzma as part of the whole package, but just landing Ingram alone, if you evaluate this trade 10 years from now and you see what Ingram can do for this team compared to what Anthony Davis can do for the Lakers, it might not be too far off from each other.
We have Adam Ramirez on the line. Make sure to give him a follow on Twitter. It is A Ramirez Sports. Again, make sure to give him a follow on Twitter, A Ramirez Sports. So we're going to move on to the NFL a little bit. You wrote an article about how each team that lost on Thanksgiving should be thankful for something. Now, I'm normally the very pessimistic guy, half glass empty guy kind of guy. But I'll try to be positive here for Dallas. I think they have a great problem because they're really a head coach away from being Super Bowl team. And I know I want to be like pessimistic guy, but when I look at Dallas, you get a better head coach than Jason Garrett, you can absolutely win the whole thing. They're just that talent, that roster that they have, they might have the best roster in the NFL. So while I want to be critical of Dallas, I'm going to try to be optimistic. When I look at the problems that they have the easiest problem to solve. Find a better head coach than Jason Garrett, and that's it.
Well, and not just that, to add on to all the talent that they have and how fortunate they've been, look at the division that they play in. They're leading it with a 6-6 record with one of the easiest schedules in the league left for the last 4 games. So everything is lining up for the Cowboys to not only have a good future with the talent that they have, and especially if they're able to replace the coach, but even just this season alone, it is far from over. They could still contend. They could still make noise. And one of the points that I was making in the article is that one of the biggest things that they need is somebody that can kind of like what Mike Vrabel is doing in Tennessee, where he's taking a team with, there's some talent there, but he's giving them an attitude that's trying to push them beyond being that 9-7 team that will maybe play on that first Saturday game of Wild Card Weekend that nobody cares about. That's something like what the Dallas Cowboys need. They're the most, I wrote it in the article, they're the most vanilla team in the league, from how clean cut their uniforms and their stadium are to the way that they play the game. And I think having Michael Bennett explode in the locker room the way that he did after that game was huge. I think they needed some of that. They need a little bit of spine behind how they're playing.
Yeah, I want to touch on, like, I don't think people understand how good Dallas is. They're not playing like it, but they have Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper. Their offensive line is unbelievable. Dak Prescott doesn't get sneezed on the whole game. DeMarcus Lawrence. They have 3 really, really good linebackers. Byron Jones. You can make the argument this is the best roster in the NFL. There is zero reason why they should be 6-6. And then I think it's becoming more and more clear this is on Jason Garrett. Like, what does that guy do except clap? I don't see how he impacts the game. It's incredible.
Yeah. He was clapping as they were wrecking the game towards the end. It was a fumble, and he was clapping as they were coming off the field.
It's incredible.
Like, sometimes I wonder whether he knows which one of the 2 teams on the field are his, with how just tuned out he seems to be. And you're right. I mean, you throw in even a mediocre head coach to lead this team, and they're Super Bowl contenders. Jason Garrett has to go.
Couldn't agree more. The last post you just did, I find fascinating, because I've kind of had the belief that you can't Trent Dilfer your way to a Super Bowl anymore. Like the 2000 Ravens with Dilfer at quarterback, you just can't do it anymore. And I've said this about Chicago. You can't win a Super Bowl with Mitch Trubisky. I don't care how good that defense is. So I don't know if defense necessarily does win championships. I think you have to have a competent defense, but I'm not necessarily sure that you can just have great defense, no offense anymore.
I think in the whole refrain, the whole defense wins championships, comes from 80s, 70s, 80s, when you saw teams constructed like that, right? It was a different type of football. And I think that it's still something that stands true whenever there's a gap or a lag in offensive innovation. Whenever there's something new that comes out, defense always takes a little bit of time to adjust. I think we can get back to the point where defense can win championships, but we need a huge revolution in the way defense could play in order to be able to keep up with guys like what Lamar Jackson is doing, or guys who can adjust like Patrick Mahomes does on the fly. And I'm sure that that's coming, and I wish I could imagine what that would look like, but then I'd be a defensive coordinator in the NFL, you know? But I think it's coming, and I'm excited to see what that's going to look like. I think defense doesn't win championships now, but I think it can, and it will in the future again.
See, I think that's so fascinating because I don't see a solution. You might be right, but it feels like football's changing. Like just, a couple weeks ago, LSU beat Alabama 46-41. I can't remember a time where those two teams played and the score was that high. 3 years ago, it was 13-9 or something like that? The SEC has gotten out of control. Auburn's scoring 40-something points. Nobody defends in the Big 12. It seems like more and more of these high-powered scoring teams in college, they just put up points left and right. Those are the guys coming into the NFL. So if it's happening in college, how is it going to change in the NFL when those are the guys that are coming into the NFL?
Well, and what I think it is, the reason for that is just a lack in defensive ingenuity. And I mean, you look at the guys that got head coaching jobs in the NFL this year that were defensive experts, and to give you an example, Vic Fangio, right? What has he done with the Broncos? He got that head coaching job because of the job that he did with the Bears defense, and he hasn't done much to turn the Broncos around, specifically on offense. So in terms of what it looks like and what it could look like for defenses to once again thrive, whether it's in college or... I think college in general is... Okay, so what we saw in the NFL in terms of offensive innovation, we started seeing in college, right? So the NFL is kind of starting to mirror that college game with option offenses with quarterbacks that can adjust plays, not just prior to the snap, but during the actual course of the play.
That's all Baltimore is zone read.
Exactly. So not only do defenses have to adjust to what's going on before, to all the audibles that are being called before, but to what Lamar Jackson's going to do as Lamar Jackson is figuring it out. That sounds almost impossible. Again, in terms of what it looks like, I don't know, but in the article I suggested something like the cover 11 offense, which I don't think is a thing, but I'm just imagining a situation where you almost essentially eliminate defensive linemen and you give up on the idea of I'm going to get to the quarterback. So that, just by doing that, you eliminate the jobs of 5 players on offense because the offensive line is going to have nothing to do. And if instead you focus on finding 11 players that have the playing ability of a Jamal Adams or a Derwin James, where they can play both the run and the pass, and you just have 2 defenders on each potential eligible receiver, and everybody else just waiting to see what the quarterback is going to do, I'm sure eventually an offense will come about that can counteract that, or they would just run it down your throat every single time and threaten your defensive backs to tackle. But something like that, something crazy and unique like that, I feel is what's going to be necessary to be able to counteract this offensive revolution.
Yeah, I find it so fascinating because, like, an example would be Nick Saban. Nick Saban has dominated college football forever. His defense is getting chewed up left and right, and he has no answers. We look at Saban as the great defensive mind in college football. He gets chewed up every week. Now, Belichick is still having a decent amount of success, but Lamar Jackson ate him alive, and so did Deshaun Watson, and he's had trouble with quarterbacks that can run. I think the way that quarterbacks can move now, Kyler Murray, more of these guys are coming. More of these mobile, athletic quarterbacks are coming, and the ones that can really run and move are the ones having success. Russell Wilson's never been better. I don't know, it might be the quarterback position to where you can't have a guy that can't move anymore. If your quarterback can't run at least a little, you're just done. That might be just the way the NFL's going.
I think it could be. I think another reason for that is the fact that I think there's fewer coaches at the college level that can coach those offensive linemen. You saw what a big deal the Quentin Nelson was when the Colts took him a few years ago. That's the highest the guard has gone in a long time. But the guy's incredible, and he was unique because college players just don't come out ready to play at the offensive line like that. They're not coached that way. They're coached to either run block or to just pass block long enough for the quarterback to either get a 1 or 2 reads out or just take off running. So until we get that fixed with offensive linemen being groomed earlier and coming into the league ready to play, then you're right. We're going to have needs for quarterbacks that not necessarily are running quarterbacks, but they can at least adjust in the way that Mahomes does. Mahomes, I wouldn't call him a running quarterback, but he's mobile and quick enough to extend the play. And we're going to need more players like that until we get all those other aspects fixed.
Totally agree. Even a guy like Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill is having great success, and it's because he can move a little bit, hand the ball off to Derrick Henry, and can get outside the pocket and make plays.
Absolutely. Yeah, with the right system, that's all it takes sometimes.
All right, Adam, this was fun. Again, make sure to follow him on Twitter, Ramirez Sports. I thought this was great. Get you guys to get to know Adam a little bit. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thanks, Trey.
All right. That'll do it for this episode of That's Some Cheese, and we will see you next time.
Tell you something. You know what really grinds my gears? You, America. Fuck you, Diane.